Hello! In today's video, I'm going to take you through how I edit one of my favourite ever dipper photos in a high key style. Let's get straight into it. Here we are in Lightroom with this beautiful dipper in flight. And as you can see, it doesn't necessarily look like a high key photo yet. And that's because I'm always very worried about blowing out whites when it comes to dipper photography. As you can see, if I zoom in here, we got very, very close to blowing out whites here. So that's why I shot it like I did, with the thought of putting everything up in post. So to begin with, I've run it through DxO already. I won't bore you with the process of that, as I went through it on my last editing video, but DxO Pure Raw 3 on Prime XD. Now, what I'm going to be doing is, first of all, going for a crop, and I think I'm going to go for a 2-3, possibly, keeping it on the right hand side. How's that looking? Maybe 16:9. Try and not include any of this dark area up here. That looks pretty nice to me. Yeah, I think that looks good. Right, so first things first, I'm going to go for some global adjustments. So for the white balance, so you can either play around with these, or if you'd like, you can use this white balance selector up here, and then go on something that should be white or neutral, click on it, see what it does. To my eye, it's a little bit purple. So maybe bring that down slightly, maybe make it a little bit warmer, get some of the brown tones back in. So before, after, you might not be able to see a great deal of difference. It's just made things a little bit less green whilst keeping things natural. So I want to bring up the exposure a fair amount. As you can see up here, we've not blown out any of the whites yet, so that's good. To me, that looks about right. Do we want to do any contrast? I don't think we do. I might bring up some of the whites. A few of the whites there. Now I want to try and get rid of most of this distracting dark areas that was the darker areas in the water. Let's see what happens if I bring up the shadows. Don't want to bring them up too much because then I'll be affecting the bird, but that seems to have worked pretty well. Bring up the back slightly. We'll be able to add the contrast back into the bird shortly. So before, after, it's already looking nicer to my eye. Do I want to do anything else? I don't think so. I think this is going to be a fairly, hopefully, fairly simple edit. Right, I think we're done for global adjustments. So first things first, I'm going to create two masks, one for the bird carrying the food and one for the background. So let's see how Lightroom does when I click on background. Hopefully shortly it will show up everything it's selected in red. There we go. Now that's done pretty well. You can see it's had a few issues. I mean, this is always going to be tricky here. Few issues here. So what can we do about that? Let's zoom back out. First things first, I'm going to add, and then I'm going to add color range. I'm going to click on this. How's that done? Pretty well. You see most of this is all done. What it has done is including a few of this and a few of this, but we can deal with that easily. So first I'm going to try and deal with this just around the edges here. So if we subtract, and then we'll take a color range, click on here. That looks about good. Yeah, that looks wonderful. So most of this bird now has not been included. We just need to deal with this bit now. So then we'll take the brush, take all of this out, maybe take some of this. So you can have a look at what is selected by pressing the O key. So that's O on, O off. Just makes it easier to see what's been masked and what hasn't. I'm not going to, I could go deeper and try and sort all of this mess out, but it will take me hours. So for these purposes, we'll leave it as it is. It looks pretty damn good to me. So before I do anything, I'm just gonna press these three here and then press duplicate and invert mask. So there we go. We've got a subject mask and a background mask. So for the subjects that I want to deal with first, we'll press O again to turn it off. I'm going to boost the contrast a little bit, probably bring down the highlights a bit, just because I'm a bit of a stickler for blown out highlights. What I'm going to do, rather than pushing up all the shadows within this bird, all I want to do is push the shadows up here. So we'll do that later. But I think I want to bring down the blacks a bit, just to make it stand out, but not too much. That looks good. I think that looks pretty good to me. So I think after I've sorted the background, I'm going to just do some work on boosting the colour of the moss that it's got coming in, and also trying to bring in a few more details into the eye area. So we'll move on to the background. All I want to do really is brighten up the background. So let's see what we can do with whites. Possibly push the blacks up further, just so you see this area here. That to me is leading my eye towards it. So if we just keep seeing what happens, that looks good. Push the shadows further. All we've got to be aware of is whether it starts looking horrible and whether you can start seeing any issues with the masks that we've created. But it all looks pretty good around the bird. So we can just concentrate on what the background looks like. Remember, you can see before and after by pressing the I key. So before, after, it's looking much nicer. I think I want to try and just get rid of any sort of colour there is in the background. So for that, just take out the saturation. That's looking nicer to my eye. We can go absolutely crazy with it and just completely push it up. But you want a little bit of context as to where it is. And I think with a few of what these imperfections are, and you keep some of these water droplets in here, it does still manage to give some context as to the fact that this dipper is flying over the top of some white water. So I think that's probably most of it done. So it's quite a big transformation from that to that. A much cleaner image. I love it. Right. Lastly, all I'm going to do is try and bring a bit of attention onto this moss here, and then do another mask for the eye area. So all I'm going to do, create a new mask, because it's probably the only greeny yellowy thing that's within this photo. We'll try. Is there anything else that's been? So that was just a colour range. You can refine it, see if it will take all of it. Looks like that will do it. Make it possibly a bit more green. That looks good to me. How does it look if I boost the saturation? So the easy way to find out whether you've done too much or not is just by looking at the before and after. Before, after. I mean, it just looks a bit more neon. I think it looks about right. Maybe boost the contrast. Don't want to make it any brighter, not really. That'll do, I think. That's good. Right, then lastly, let's just get a little brush. Just brush around the eye. I'm going to be a bit haphazard. Brush around the eye and face area. And all I'm going to do, I think, is boost the shadows, but not to the point where it looks strange. Boost the shadows, bring the contrast up, maybe bring the exposure up slightly. You don't want to start seeing, you can start seeing a difference between this side and this side, but we want to try and make that seamless. So if I bring that down, 0.2, that you probably get away with. Let's have a look. So that's before. That's after. It's possibly a bit too much. So if it's a bit too much, remember, all you have to do is go into the mask itself, and then you can change the intensity of the mask by moving the slider down. So if we go all the way down, that's back to normal. Keep it coming up, keep it coming up, keep it coming up. That looks about right to me. If you really want to go in, you can just get a little brush and increase this here. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do this, don't know how it's going to look. Well, it's a small difference. That'll do. Right, I think we're pretty much done. One final thing I'd like to do is remove chromatic aberration, just to make sure there's going to be no fringing around the side of this bird. And then if we think it needs some sharpening, we can try it. I like to put a little bit of sharpening, bring the radius up, and then we'll try with this mask. I don't always sharpen, but we'll see. So just a bit of sharpening, but to be honest, I can barely even see it with my eyes. So that's probably a good thing, as to me, it's always worth keeping everything fairly subtle, so you can't really tell that you've done some big changes. If I was getting finicky, I'd probably go along and take out any of these imperfections, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm happy with that. Probably my favourite ever dipper photo in flight. There you go. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and it was at least of some use to you. I'm going to be planning on probably doing an editing video every month, so if that is of interest to you, then drop me a subscription and you'll be updated whenever new videos come out. But for now, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers!